Okay, I'm inviting Juano.
Oh, hello everybody. Just waiting for Juano to come in. There he is.
Hello,
Hi,
Alan.
Juano.
Coming?
How are you?
I'm good.
Oh, look at the
The Scottish, the
the
Scottish
dusk.
elf trapped in a middle-aged man's body. I love it. There
You
he is
see
in
it.
person.
I love the dusk behind you.
It's getting dark, isn't it? Here.
How are you, Juano?
I'm good. I'm really good.
So
Yeah.
where is this? Is this beautiful book? Is it out?
It is. So you've got a sample. You've got a proof copy. I've got the hardback here,
Whoa.
which has your name at the back as well, because you gave me a gorgeous quote.
Oh, that's nice. Oh, I'm glad I made the hardback. I thought I'd missed the boat.
And your full quote's inside as well. So
Oh, great. So when has it come out? I'm a bit confused, but is it out in Britain?
it's it's out in the UK, yes, but people in the States can buy it through Gaze the Word Bookshop. Will ship to America, and Waterstones will also ship to the States as well. So
Oh, that's
yeah,
good.
you can. It's out. It's doing well.
Good.
Yeah.
How does it feel? Because this is an incredible. Well, it's a beautiful book. First of all, everybody,
Thank
it
you,
really
Alan.
is. It's stunning, so moving, and so beautifully written and poetic, and just like an incredible story. And it's also, it must be, you had to be very vulnerable to write this,
Yeah.
and you had to be it's very raw. And I'm just wondering, I mean, I've had a bit of experience of it
Yeah.
myself, about this way of talking very authentically and truthfully about sort of things in your past that were not very easy. What is that feeling like now that it's out in the world in such a major way?
It's terrifying, to be honest, Alan, because as you've experienced it yourself, you, I tried to work this. I tried to work my background into my art, and it was never possible because it seemed too dark and too much of a task to tackle within a painting or within that kind of art form. And I just wanted to do something that was really honest and separate my artwork from who I actually am and where I've come from and what I've experienced in life. But yeah, it's really frightening to have it out in print and people sort of you know you
Yeah.
really intimately, where you've come from, how you grew up, and how you started in life.
And and I'm just going to actually pin this. Someone just said the book is called. How do I do that? Pin comment, because it says what the book's called, why we're here.
Yes,
Um, how
that's my cousin.
is it
Yes,
really? Kirsty Gormley.
Kirsty.
Hello, Kirsty. Um, how? Why did you do it? I mean, what was the thing that was the
You,
catalyst?
you know what? I done it. Um, I done it because I think it's a story that has to be told. I was with my mother in the 70s, late 70s, early 80s in Glasgow, and my mother was an addict. She was an alcoholic, and she had a lot of mental health challenges. And she came from a part of Scotland that, let me just say that geographically, she didn't have she didn't stand a chance, really. There wasn't any support for her. And we were desperately poor. My bedroom window had no glass in it. The weeds were growing into my bedroom window. We had no furniture, no light bulbs. It was dire. It was dire. Um, what was your question, Alan?
About why now? Why now to tell
Why
this
now?
story?
Yeah. And I started tinkering with the idea of telling my story, because I wanted people to see what it's like for a child that goes through the care system. And I also wanted people to see what it's like for the mother, because I went back and met my birth mother many years later. So I kind of wanted to tell both those stories in a way. And it felt like the right time. I tried to tinker with the idea of screenplays and different things. you know what I'm talking about because you were involved in a project a while back.
Yes, indeed.
And I kind of hid behind different characters. I was very afraid to tell my own story because, like you say, it leaves you very vulnerable. It leaves you completely open. And, you know, I have my own son myself now, and with my amazing partner, and going through the experience of adopting myself, I learned a lot about why my parents made the decisions they made, adopting me, and I learned a lot about myself because when you go through the adoption process, you learn a lot about neglect on the child's brain and the development of a child's brain and how love and nurture can actually refire the neurons and heal the damaged cells. And I found that just so fascinating, and it answered a lot of questions about myself as a child, why I kind of behaved the way I did. So it just seemed like the right time to do it.
That sounds good because I love the idea that, well, because in the same way you can have second generation trauma, that you can actually pass trauma on to your child without them doing anything, just because of the fact that it's in your sort of DNA.
Yes.
I love the idea that in the same way you can heal by doing that too.
Yes.
It's very heartening. Tell us more about your work before writing this book. When you talked about your artwork and stuff, for those people who don't know, give us a little Juano history.
Okay, so my artwork, I reach out to people. I ask them to take a selfie. They send me a selfie, and I just love the selfie culture, and I love all the filters and the apps. So I love to play with people's faces, and that comes from my early childhood, being in a children's home. When I was separated from my mum, I didn't have any photographs of her. So the social worker would give me a book and he would say, draw your memories, draw your mum's face, and draw what you remember to take onto your new family so that you've got something to hold on to. So I drew my mother's face over and over and over again, and it became an absolute obsession. So the face, the portrait, I've just grown and loved people's faces. I love telling a visual story around a person's face, and I love the digital media of doing that because, and people think, oh, it's just a couple of apps. I spend weeks and weeks layering images together, and then I print it out and I paint over the top by hand.
Right.
And
that's how we first met, actually, because you did a painting of me in Edinburgh years ago.
Yes, well, we met at the Edinburgh Film Festival, and we started chatting, and you said, "Oh, do you want to go out for a drink?" And there's a club happening, and I said, "Yeah." And that night I went home and rattled up a painting of you, and I don't know if you remember this. Do you remember when I gave you a bird shit right on the front of it? Yes. And I said, "That's lucky, Alan."
It's still got it. It's still got that little addition, the smear. And so when you like the book ends kind of, where does it end in terms of your story and how old you are?
I was, hang on, let me get this right. I was in my 20s, sort of early 20s when the book ends. Right. And I didn't want to go past that. You know, a lot of amazing things happened in my life after Slum Boy ends. Right. And my life took a drastically different turn.
But there's another memoir.
Pardon?
So there's another memoir.
It's part 2, isn't it? Hopefully. Yeah.
But you, because it's so interesting because you, when I first met you, you know, you talked about having modeled and worked for like Pierre Gilles and Mugler and those sorts of really stylized art fashion fusion world. And so that could not be more removed from what Slum Boy is about in your life. How did that all happen? How did that?
You know what? Here's a fantastic true story. When I was at secondary school, the 5th year of secondary school, I was probably about 17. I was watching, do you remember Eurotrash with Jean-Paul Gaultier and
Of
Antoine
course,
Decaune?
Antoine Decaune, West,
Yes. And I'd
Your
seen,
Trash.
yes, I loved it. I used to record it and watch it. But I got a real sort of, yeah, it was called Eurotrash, but I got a real education from it,
Yeah.
in the sense that they exposed us to a lot of the really edgy fashion designers, Mugler, Gaultier, and Pierre and Gilles were on there, and I just thought, wow, who are these guys? And I won the 50th art prize, and the prize was a book token. And my adoptive mother took me into Glasgow to get a book, and I picked up this Pierre Gilles book, and I went, "Can I have this?" And she was very, very proper, and she looked at it and she went, "Absolutely no way! This is not for young boys. Put it back." And I was like, "Please, I really need this book." And she was so horrified, but she was like, she's just let me have it.
Oh, that's
And
nice.
I cut the book up and I stuck it all over my bedroom wall. And then years later, I was on one of the social media platforms, and Pierre and Gilles saw some images. I was photographing myself, and they saw some images and invited me to Paris. And I thought I was going for a book signing just to meet them. And they were like, "Okay, closed off, get on the set." And I was like, oh. And it just kind of went from there, really. They kind of kicked it off for me. So I owe them a lot.
Amazing.
I owe them a lot. They've been so supportive, and I really love what they do. They've inspired so
Yeah.
many artists. But you have James Bidgood, who came before them as well.
Right. So you
And
worked with him in London
I worked with Jim in New York.
or
Yeah,
New York?
yeah. I worked with him in the studio. Not for a long time, for a year. I worked as his artist assistant, and that was really interesting. He invited me in, and we were talking on the phone. He said, "Look, I really want you to come and work with me," and he said, "But you're going to have to bring a change of clothes because my apartment's quite cruddy." And when I got there, it was just like roaches are running up the walls, in amongst the glitter and in amongst the sequins, covered in glitter and roaches. It was intense.
Oh my God.
It was crazy. And one day I had to go and answer the intercom, and there was roaches inside the screen of the intercom
What?
and in the copy. It was terrible, but I loved that man. I really missed him a lot. He paved the way for so many amazing artists, and he inspired so many of us. Yeah, I miss speaking to him. I used to speak to him all the time, and he was just one of those guys who told you straight. If he thought someone was shit, he'd say, "It's bullshit.
Right.
Get rid of it. Start again."
Yeah.
And I love that honesty, because a lot of
Yeah.
people just kiss your ass and go, "Oh my God, it's fantastic. It's wonderful." Jim was one of those guys who said, "No, start again. Change it to this."
It's so
Brilliant.
funny. I've just been doing an interview this morning. I was just talking about this thing about how so many people are, it's not that they're afraid to say what they feel, but they're afraid of the potential consequences or blowback they might get for being honest, for
Yeah.
being authentic. And it's not that they're saying something necessarily offensive, it's just being frank and honest.
I think
And
I think it's the way forward. How are you going to grow as a person if people just keep blowing smoke up your ass?
yeah,
You
yeah,
know,
absolutely.
it's like even with our writing.
Oh, somebody
I worked with an
wanna
editor,
tell us
and
the name of Jim again, because people are asking on the thing about
his name's James Bidgood, and he made a film back in the 70s, 60s, 70s called Pink Narcissus.
I think it was the
Yeah.
60s, yeah.
And in those days, it was illegal to be gay, so he couldn't put his name to it. So he titled it Pink Narcissus Anonymous. And he, in the process of having it edited together, the people who were editing, because he shot this all in his own
And this
one-bedroom
tiny,
apartment.
that's what's incredible about it, because it looks like these epic sets,
It's
but it's all in some
so
tiny little flat.
beautiful. Listen, this man is the godfather. He was a genius. But he built, yeah, like you say, huge elaborate sets in this tiny one bedroom apartment. you know, everything by hand, sequenced by hand, and filmed it. And then he sent it to a different studio to have it cut together, and they stole it, and they wouldn't give him it back.
Oh, I didn't know that.
So he turned up with an axe and destroyed the studio.
Oh my
And
God.
so he told me anyway. But years later, as you know, Jim kind of fell under the radar and hit hard times. And years later, he was rediscovered. Somebody was in his house and said, "What's in this bag?" And it was all these beautiful images and all these slides. And they were like, "Hang on, this is your work." And he just, genius. He was a
Wow.
genius. I
How
loved him.
exciting you got to work with him.
Such an honour, such an honour.
And also, Jono, it was funny because Juano, I was talking to my friend Jono, and about you and to Douglas
Yes,
Stewart,
yes.
and we were talking about this sort of, Douglas Stewart is the man who won the Booker Prize for Shuggie Bain, and
Young
my friend Jono's
Mungo.
and Young Mungo,
Yes.
and we were talking about that sort of. The kind of west of Scotland male, which has been a thing in literature, the kind of, the hard man sort of thing and the no mean city. But I'm
Yes.
just curious about what your thoughts are on why there are so many stories now about sort of queer, queer west of Scotland boys in situations where they're, sort of helpless to get out, and how their imagination becomes what sort of frees them.
I think that's all we had, to be honest. We didn't have anything else, we didn't have, it wasn't like New York or London, we're all from little pockets and little villages around Scotland. And, if you didn't have your imagination, I was raised in a scrapyard and in a boxing gym, which, by the way, I loved. I loved it, but it wasn't me. There wasn't a reference for who I was, and I think that it's really important that people use their voices and say, yeah, I went through this as well, because it's not just me. It's yourself. It's Douglas. It's Damien Barr. There's lots and lots of us.
But I wonder I guess what also I'm curious about is, what is it about? Poverty obviously plays a big part in all these stories, but there's also something about the sort of the toxicity of the west of Scotland male, or the Scottish male, or that kind of culture of abuse and stuff like that. And I don't know if you've got any ideas of why it was, and perhaps is, so prevalent in that part of the world.
I don't know. I really don't know. I honestly don't have an answer for that, Alan. I really don't know. Could it be, related to, where we're situated in the country of United Kingdom, and how we're governed by especially back in the day when we had Thatcher, and we're kind of ruled under that kind. It's really oppressive.
Yes.
And men had to work in mines and shipyards, and there wasn't time for fucking around and being flamboyant and being. It was so tough for men, because they were the breadwinners. If they didn't.
It's interesting. All these stories are about during Thatcher's time. Yours, Damien's, Douglas's.
But way before that as well.
Yeah.
We come from Scotland is a place of where there's big industry. The steel, the clay mines, the brickworks. The steel works. So I think it's that.
Yeah.
I don't have an answer for it,
No.
because it wasn't. Yeah, I grew up around men who were like that, but I think I'm the last. I think I'm the last generation seeing that. I would like to think. I think things are changing, because industry's going, and the industry is now all going online, so
And we're
there's no need for men to go out
you're
and,
breaking a cycle.
yeah.
Also, I think it's really interesting as well that, you know, I've been really impressed about Scotland right now about speaking, for example, the war in Gaza, like one of the few countries that is actually speaking up and calling other governments to account who are not doing enough and who are failing to vote in the UN thing. And I just think that actually that it's a very progressive country, and I mean, I guess it's always been progressive in some ways, but now, especially in terms of LGBT and especially in trans, the Scottish government really trying to do things despite the Westminster government. So it feels like maybe we're in a time now where those, and the world has changed, where those stories can be heard and can be enjoyed. But I mean, it's been sort of so heartening about how Damien's book, Maggie and Me, Douglas's book, and I'm sure yours are so enjoyed across the mainstream, not just not just within the LGBT group. And I think that's really fascinating and heartening that's able to happen. I think it's a really great. I think Scotland's in a really exciting phase right now in terms of its culture and its
I think
progressiveness.
so.
And everybody, if you've got questions, I'm going to go back and see.
I was going to say how lucky I feel to have gone through. I mean, school for me was hell because there was homophobia and even within the teachers. But the arts, the arts education in Scotland, I don't know how you experienced it, Alan, but I thought they were absolutely amazing. You know, the things we were exposed to, you know, the Scottish artists that we were exposed to as well was phenomenal.
Yeah.
So that was yeah.
Yeah, no, it's true. I mean, in all those books, it's kind of, and it really, especially in yours, it's art that kind of saves you. And I think we're lucky to come from a country where, you know, the arts are valued and are properly funded.
Yes.
Obviously, we could all do with more, but they are valued within our culture.
Yeah.
Like I always say to people, one of the first things the new Scottish government did, the Scottish Parliament in after the early 2000s, was to create a National Theatre of Scotland. That's one of the first acts of the. So that sort of shows you where we are with all that. But anyway, people are saying young people are so much more accepting and vocal and not afraid. And Simon's saying it was tough for the women, of course. I think in Juano's book, you'll definitely see how tough it is for women, and especially not just in poverty and the care system, but also with addiction, which you talk about as well. We're not really talk very much about that when you add addiction into the formula. How has that been for you growing up in terms of? I mean, when you have an addict in the family, it's always very scary, isn't it, about how that might
You know,
affect you.
I would say I'm pretty much teetotal. I'm afraid of alcohol because I know what my mother went through, and yeah, I just won't touch it. And I know it's a glass of wine's absolutely harmless, but yeah, it's a difficult thing to watch somebody when you're, especially when you try and help them and they're helpless, they're gone. You know.
Yes, indeed. Gosh. Someone's asking about editing the book. So it's going to be a very, how are you saying that? I think how editing a book can be brutal. How did you feel during that process?
You know what? I broke my heart daily editing this book. I had to, basically what I done was I went back to my earliest childhood memory, which is my first memory of being with my mum is being out at Barhead Dams, and we saw her partner drown, and it was as a wee boy, it was horrendously frightening because you've got all these adults screaming and things. But just having to revisit that and go through, I had like 200-300 pages of social work records that I had to then go back over and just get dates and make sure that my memory, I hadn't made things up. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
and
God.
it was really difficult. It was like reliving it daily for 2 years to get it written. But yeah, I'm glad it's out now. And
Yeah.
it's
Yes.
tough.
It must be an
Editing is
incredible. Have you, are there people from your past that, because when I've written, memoirs, especially the first one about my childhood, like it's shocking for people who perhaps know you later in your life, for
yeah,
them to sort of realize that there's a
yeah,
whole part of your life and a sort of very difficult and insane one.
yes.
How has that been when people read it and do you get people
Well,
sort of,
it's only just come out, so I've not really had those conversations very much. One of my neighbours, I saw her in the street and she was breaking her heart, crying,
right?
and I was like, don't be silly. I've had a really lucky life. I have a really gorgeous life. I have my amazing partner. I have my wee boy, and I love my life. So I wouldn't change any of what's happened because it's made me the man I am today.
Yeah.
But yeah, we'll see. I'm
It
sure
will
we'll have
be. Like,
more of
I
that.
just, as a memoirist to another memoir,
Yeah,
that's what I found. It's lovely, but people feel guilty that they didn't know, or
yeah,
they didn't do anything at the time, and you think, well, there's nothing
that's right.
you could have done,
That's
but
right.
actually, what you did was be my
Yeah,
friend, and that's what I needed at that time. And it's
yes.
impossible to sort of talk about certain things when you're going through them, especially when you're little.
It's also funny because I keep saying to myself, well, it was a different time. Times were different, and times, we grow and we change. So you kind of know what I'm trying to say here. That was something that my dad said. My dad said, you know, my, he was kind of trying to say, sorry to me in a way. And I said, you don't have to say sorry because it was a different time, and that's how you were raised, and that was your experience. And when you were a young man, being gay was illegal. So you just wanted the best for me. So
Yeah,
you don't have to say sorry. So
yeah.
yeah, it's a
But
funny thing.
people are asking about what your background is, Juano, in terms of where you're from, because uh, I mean, it's so funny. Like when I read the book, I was like, oh gosh, yes, I hadn't really ever thought
Thought about
about that.
it, yeah.
Yeah, and so
So
and also obviously with your name and everything like
yes,
that. But that's part of the book, isn't it? You
yeah,
find out
yeah.
that, and
So I was born Juan, you know, and my dad was South African. He came over to Scotland with his parents and his sister, and he was mixed race, and he had a really hard time in Maryhill, living in Glasgow in Maryhill back in the day, and looking the way he did. And he met my mum, and my mum was Scottish, and yeah, they gave me a Spanish name, and I never found out why I got a Spanish name from a man who came from South Africa, but we figured it must have been something to do with the huge amount of immigration that was happening in South Africa back in the day. So I don't know why I have a Spanish name, but yeah.
it's a
But
good
yeah,
one.
when I was adopted, they changed my name to John, and I took the family's second name. And then later on in life, I just wanted to reclaim something for myself because of the experience of adoption. You live in someone else's life, and as much as you embrace those people as your family, and I love them like I love my life. They're my family, those people who adopted me. But you want something for yourself, something of your own. So I just took my name back from my birth certificate and used Juan again. So
And how did your adoptive family feel about that? Were they cool?
he was my dad was fine. He was fine. I mean, they still call me John, and lots of my friends still call me John, but it's half and half. Some people call me Juan, some people call me Juano, some people call me John.
Right.
I've been John McKelvey. I've had so many different names because my mum, what she done was when she was putting me into care, whoever she was with at the time, she would give me their last name.
Right.
So each time I was received into care, I have all these different names, and I mean, yeah.
That must have been difficult to find your records, was it?
No,
Because you have to remember who. No,
they were all there. Yeah, they were all there, bunched together. And I was really lucky. I was really lucky, Alan, because they changed the process of giving people their birth records. Now they black everything out with a black some. You know, when they photocopy any
redacted.
yes, any sensitive information, which can be your last name, which can be who looked after you, is all blacked out. And so I got my records just before that happened, so it's all there. And I got a medical journal from the doctor while I was in care, and and I was reading it, and he tells the staff, "You're putting shoes on him that are far too small for his feet, and you're crushing his feet." So, and I've grown up with my wee toe like this, you know, it sits on top of my fourth toe.
Yeah.
And we tried, my adoptive parents tried to have it corrected, and nothing worked. It didn't hurt me, but as I get older, it's awkward, you know, my feet hurt.
Yeah.
And it was just those 2 years in care where they crushed my feet into these shoes because they were so underfunded, and they were giving the kids second-hand clothes and the same bloody meal every day. It was dire.
Yeah, that's such a beautiful but grueling bit of the book.
Yeah.
When you just, like you, little one who doesn't understand, and we as readers think, oh my God, don't hurt your feet anymore. It's just, that's what's actually, you know, it's so, again, everybody who's watching this is, here it is, Slum Boy. It's such a beautiful book, but it's written so poetically and without any, it's got no anger and no sort of, there's no malice, there's no sort of meanness or revenge or anything. It's written as a sort of a fairy tale about, and that makes it, sort of elevates it and makes it more so beautiful, but also so much more heart-wrenching, because you're like a little boy inside telling your experience.
I wanted to write it that way. I wanted to write it from my early experience. So I wanted the reader to see what I was seeing as I was seeing it as a child, and kind of grow with me and experience what that was like. And when I finished it, and my publisher's never been read it, said, "It's really unusual to write like that. Are you sure you want to do it like that?" And I said, "Yeah." People have responded really well to it. But I don't have any sort of bad feelings about it, because, like I say, I have had a really lucky life. You know, I have a career that I absolutely love doing, and I just wouldn't change it, because it's. I've had experiences that I've lost both my mothers. You know, I've been through care system, and I've seen things that a kid shouldn't have seen, which you'll read if you read the book, people. But I wouldn't change it. I wouldn't change it, because
I think about, I always say that, like, I feel like life's like a game of Jenga, and if you're happy at the top, then you can't really take something out from underneath, a memory, a bad memory, or you can't regret anything, because everything else might tumble down, because it's all made you who you are.
Exactly.
Colette was saying, she says, beautiful book, and I've seen your feet.
She's Colette has seen my feet for sure.
Well, that's another story.
That's a different
story. So what now then, Juano? What's this book's out? You're doing a press stuff for it, and it's been really well received. When you sent me a review in the Guardian the other day, that was amazing.
I was just blown away by that, Alan. I just wasn't expecting it. It was a bit of a surprise, and it's just gorgeous to see a review like that and have it so well received. That's
so great.
That was lovely.
And just, you got more plans for writing, though?
I do. I'm going to continue. I'm keeping it quiet just now, but I am writing something else. But yeah, I want to see this as a movie. I want to see it hit the screens, and I would love to see a nice drama made of it. And I'm a visual artist, so I like the visual stuff.
And talking of which, this image
yes
on the cover, somebody's talking of such a stunning. Who took this photo?
Okay, so this is He is a gorgeous photographer. Look him up. He's called Nick Hedges, and he worked for Oxfam, not Oxfam. He worked for Shelter when he was studying back in the 60s and 70s. So they commissioned him to go around Glasgow and the UK and photograph the slums. And I contacted Nick when I saw this photograph, and I just loved it because it looks like what I could see from my bedroom window in my mother's house in South Nits Hill. It was just like a bombed out mess. And so I painted this on an enormous, I think it's a 50-inch canvas. And it took me months to paint, and at the same time I had this story. I was writing little bits, and it's so funny that this became the cover. It's such a gorgeous cover. But he's a brilliant photographer. Please look him up, Nick Hedges. He's got some beautiful photos.
Before we go, Juano, just remind us all again where we can buy this book if people are not in Britain. I mean, you can buy it everywhere in Britain right now, but
you can buy it everywhere. So if you go to my profile, there's the link tree. Gaze the Word Bookshop in London. Please support them. They're an independent bookshop. They're fantastic. They're stocking signed copies, and they will ship to America. It might cost you $10, but let me tell you, it's worth it. It's a beautiful book.
And you know what? Gaze the Word. When I was doing the play Bent in London,
yes,
and we were rehearsing just around the corner from Gaze the Word, and Bent's about gay people in the time of Hitler coming to power, and sort of the in the late 30s, 20s and 30s, and doesn't go well, and it's a really powerful play. Anyway, I would go into Gaze the Word bookshop to get sort of books on gay life in Germany then, and during the Holocaust and everything, and that was the very first place where they had a little leaflet at the till, because marriage equality had just happened in Britain, and had a little leaflet about everything you want to know about civil partnerships and that was, I got one of those. I thought, oh, wait a minute, I'm coming, my now husband is coming over to London. We're going to live here for months. Maybe we could get married. And I had the little leaflet. Yeah, I don't have mine on. I had the leaflet, and I hid the leaflet behind a picture in my flat. And then when he came, I because of that leaflet, basically, I asked him to marry me, and here we are, 20 years later. Yeah.
From that bookshop, from Gaze the Word Bookshop.
Yeah, it was them. They were kind of pushed me into that direction. Anyway. Everybody, thank you for joining us for this lovely chat.
Thank you,
Juano, it's so good to see you, and looking so well and happy and enjoying this much deserved success. It's such a beautiful book. And it's called Slum Boy. And please, everyone, tell your friends, because this is how great writing and great stories get out into the world.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Lots and lots of love.
Guys.
Bye.
Thank you, Alan. I appreciate it. Bye, guys. Bye.
See you.
Bye.